Hello everyone, Ryan here. So I recently listened to audiobook version of The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls. It's a memoir. Also, well, I guess like most memoirs, autobiographical. And I gotta say, even if only 70 to 80% of what's in this memoir is true, I mean really true, then wow, I really sympathize and empathize with Jeannette Walls and her siblings. Maybe not really empathize that much, but I definitely sympathize. Her and her siblings definitely had a rough childhood, and of course no thanks to their eccentric parents. But what made it even more interesting was the fact that both her parents, they seem to both have a lot of common sense, but at the same time would deliberately go out of their way to stubbornly ignore a lot of common sense things. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how it came off to me. And because even though, for the most part, I mean, her dad he considered himself to be an entrepreneur of sorts, and the way she described him, she described him as being a pretty intelligent guy. I think that even by today's standards, you could consider him to be highly intelligent. And then, of course, her mother was an artist type. She pretty much didn't want to be a mother, but every now and then she did. She didn't mind so much being a mom, but most of the time it just seemed like she just didn't want to be a mother at all. She just wanted to focus on her art and painting, drawing, sculpting, and all of that. And which, I understand that. To me, I get that. If this were just a memoir about just two people, like if it was just about her father and mother and just how they grew up, and say it was back when, before they had any kids, and it still would have been very interesting, but I guess not really as interesting. That's not to say that I find the misery of others to be entertaining, or maybe I do, I don't know. On some level, on some level, we all like to peer into the lives of others and, compare our lives to their lives, see how crappy their lives are compared to ours, and or something along those lines. And we all do it. We've all been guilty of doing it, whether we choose to admit it or not. And so, as far as memoir is concerned, this is definitely how it came across to me. And there's a lot of moments which definitely made me laugh out loud, but there was even more moments that made me say out loud to myself, what the hell? Our parents are really that stubborn that they refuse help from other people? Their children are starving. Their children are literally starving their asses off. And they kept refusing help over and over again. Not just government help, but help from other people, neighbors, relatives, And yeah, it just, I had no idea. I mean, I guess I kind of had an inkling of an idea before listening to this audiobook. But now it's like really opened up my mind to the possibility that, you know what, there really are some parents out there that just really don't give a shit about their kids. And it's not a funny thing. It's just, I find it to be ludicrous, ridiculous, and yeah, you could say, it's easy to say to someone, if you can't afford kids, don't have any, or don't have any more. It's easy for those of us who don't have kids, or for those of us who might be able to afford to take care of kids, and it's easy for us to, judge those who can't afford to take care of their 2 kids, 4 kids, 6 kids, 8 kids, 25 kids. But the reality is that, none of us know what each individual goes through on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, and, so I feel like it's not really fair to make that kind of broad judgment and feel like it can apply to every single person, when in reality it can't. It just can't. It's, we like to think that reality is just nothing but black and white, easy to understand, definitive things, and but it's not. It's just not, and it probably never will be. So therefore, I commend Jeannette Walls for writing this memoir. I can only imagine how hard it must have been for her to write about this. A lot of the intimate details of her own childhood and early adulthood, and definitely commend her on that. I mean, obviously, as far as the rating goes, I gotta give it, I'm gonna give it 5 stars, definitely. I would say like 4.5, but yeah, I can easily bump it up to solid 5 stars. And that's even me knowing, like, I figure when it comes to memoirs and these kinds of autobiographical works, obviously, I do realize that some stuff is going to be embellished a little more. But, I mean, again, like I said before, even if only 70 to 80% of it is 100% true, still, it's still enough for me to consider giving it a 5-star rating and consider recommending it to other people, which, by the way, I do recommend reading it or listening to the audiobook, sharing it with others. Because it's also one of those memoirs that really makes you think about your own life, your own childhood, and definitely for me, I mean, I can say I consider myself lucky that I never had to experience starvation when I was a kid. My parents, they knew what they were doing. Granted, I mean, obviously there may have been some moments when I've felt like I wasn't close to them or like I couldn't relate to them. But otherwise, they never let me or my sister starve. And, I definitely thank them for that. I don't know. It just, overall, this memoir made me feel grateful for my own childhood, my own early adulthood. And even now, as I think about it, I realize that, yeah, I may not have every single little thing that I wanted to have when I was a kid, or even teenager, or even like when I was in my 20s. But nonetheless, I still enjoyed my childhood. I enjoyed my childhood, and that's what I feel like. You know, when I come across memoirs like this one by Jeannette Walls, you know, it just makes me frustrated and angry over the fact that, you know, there could be millions upon millions of children just in this country alone, just in the U.S., who unfortunately aren't having happy childhoods through no fault of their own. And, you know, it's really a shame. It sucks. It's total bullshit that this is the world we live in. This is the reality we live in. But I guess I feel like with memoirs like this and other books, audiobooks of a similar vein, I feel like they can really help open up the minds of the rest of us, you know, who are fortunate enough to have happy childhoods. Or even if it was like, you know, somewhat happy childhoods, you know. Or even if, you know, you had a crappy childhood for the most part, but you never experienced starvation. And I don't know, I guess for me, I feel like, you know, when you were a kid and you never had to experience starvation, to me, that's pretty much like the same thing as having a happy childhood. Or at least pretty damn close to it. So, yeah. As far as like any other details in this memoir, you know, I like that she talks about how her dad was interested in things like physics and mathematics, philosophy, and I don't know, I guess because it kind of reminded me of myself, but also reminded me of my own dad. He happens to be a college professor, and from time to time, me and him will have these different long discussions about different topics, usually most of them pertaining to some kind of sociological topic. And so yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I like that part. And her mom being an artist actually kind of somewhat reminded me of my own mom and myself, because I do paint here and there, and I feel like as far as like the creative, like I got my own creativity from both my parents, but the more intellectual stuff I picked up from my dad, the more creative, like spur of the moment kind of stuff I picked up from my mom. And so when Jeannette Walls describes both her parents, they kind of reminded me of my parents, you know. Obviously, except for the fact that, you know, my parents didn't let me and my sister starve. So, but yeah, other than that, it definitely reminded me of my parents, somewhat, not entirely. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I do like the ending of this memoir too, because it is realistic. And also, too, it's not like in the past, I've read some memoirs that they don't really have much of an ending. It's just kind of like, it just comes to an end point with very little detail, and that's it. But this memoir, it's got, the ending has the right amount of details. So, yeah, I don't know what else I could say that could make you want to read this or listen to the audiobook. But you definitely should if you haven't already. And of course, I'm aware there's a movie adaptation. I've yet to see it. I hope to see it soon. And yeah, I guess I just really hope that it's at least somewhat in keeping with the book itself. So yeah. So yeah, once again, I give it 5 stars. 5 stars all the way. So can't go wrong with 5-star recommendation review. That's what I feel. So that'll do it for my review of The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls. And thanks for watching this. As always, till next time, don't forget to keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.